Hello and welcome back. This is Chi Talks. Let's get to it. I'm Javi. I am joined here with my partner, Nona,
Hey
and our guest
everyone.
today, Sophia Sacks. Welcome back. Now, our guest today, let's see, she's studied nutrition for over 15 years. She has 35 years in the food service industry, working in all capacities from front and back of the house, including retail and food production. The owner operator of her own Airstream food truck called Neo Pasado Food Truck in Taos, New Mexico. She's currently working at Cerro Vista Farm in Cerro, New Mexico, which is located in northern New Mexico at the southern end of the Rocky Mountains, which sounds awesome. And she has picked up Qigong over the past few years and martial arts. So we're going to talk about all of these things. Today we're talking about food as memory. We've heard of the phrase food as medicine, and the seed for this episode was planted when I was having a conversation with Sophia, and she told me food is memory. So we're going to be unpacking that today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Javi. Thank you, Nona, for having me.
So we'll dive right in. Where does Qi originate? From where does Qi originate? We're going to access our Qigong learning and training and our experiential learning and training in our various fields and backgrounds. So from where does Qi originate? Something cannot come from nothing, and I'm quoting directly from The Root of Qigong, written by Dr. Yang Ming, page 37. Matter is a physical form of energy, and energy is an unblocked potential or an insubstantial form of matter. For example, you burn a piece of wood or you burn gas and obtain qi in the form of heat and light. Similarly, food and air are taken into your body, and through biochemical reactions, they are converted into qi, which is commonly in the form of heat and bioelectric magnetic energy. Whenever you take in more food than your body requires, the unexpected excess is stored in your body as fat. So when we revisit our definition of Qigong, remember Qigong is loosely translated as energy work, then we see that this particular context is the chemical breakdown of food, that potential form of energy within the body. Let's recall that work, Gong, conveys the notions of applied energy over time. Remember that the word Gong gives us Gong Fu, aka Kung Fu, which has nothing to do with fighting or martial arts, but actually applied discipline over a long period of time. The important word is Gong, and when we take that into our relationship with food over time, this is our Qigong topic for today as we explore food as memory with our guest. Before we move forward, let's take a look back to the time when we didn't know of bioelectricity. So there was a time when humans worked with and relied more on their senses and feelings in the moment, just as animals do. We lived simply off the land. We ate with the seasons, meaning whatever came off the tree or came out of the ground, that is what we ate. Additionally, we came across something new that caught our eye or caught our nose. And when we came across something new, what might we do? We, definitely touch it, sniff it, break it apart, some sort of sensual experience. And we would possibly taste it, possibly discovering a new food, possibly not, maybe discovering, God knows what. Um, if we've discovered a snack or a food, we would celebrate that. We'd share that, and we'd celebrate that with the tribe, with the whole family. So over the course of a few millennia, the Chinese are known to have deeply observed and recorded these experiences. And over time, remember time and energy, Gong, the words like herb were developed, superfood, um, characteristics to describe foods like nourishing or calming or depleting or cooling. Those words were developed to classify substances that came from the earth. So I love this. I really like this idea. It speaks to me as having my own experience in the forest, walking around and being pulled by a scent, and engaging with plants in that way. So we fast forward to today. We already know oranges contain vitamin C. We eat more when we get sick, or to prevent preemptively um, stave off illness and boost our immune system. We know something like kohlrabi contains more vitamin C, so we might eat that. We we have the information available to us intellectually. We eat for pleasure or for comfort, and we follow and create recipes based on foods we already know about. And we find ourselves in a time when we no longer utilize our senses or our felt experienced relationships with plants around us to guide our consumption, to keep us alive, nourished, and safe. We know that a lemon is sour. We know a cucumber is crunchy. It holds a lot of water, and along with these other greens may have these bitter, undesirable tastes. So I ask, where is the wonder? Where do we find curiosity, appreciation, gratitude for all of these food units? So I think I'll pass it on to you, Nona, at this time, as we discover our feelings and experiences.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
great that you paint this picture of how Qigong was developed, the world in which Qigong was developed. And I think I was planning to, as we were planning out this show, to touch on how all of this relates to our shared current state in the world, because Javi likes to always remind me that our Qigong practice is always based on application. This situation that has us all sheltering in place, sipping from life instead of engulfing it. Maybe with that, I'd like to invite Sophia to join into that conversation.
Well, there's several issues you've brought up, and I think one, asking what is health and how people can navigate that in our world where we have been removed to some degree from our planet, and the planetary forces. Even though a practice in Qigong will realign you with those forces, really what you're looking for is balance. And balance brings you to the present moment, which allows you to make a clear decision, with wisdom mind, as is often talked about and should be talked about in Qigong. So balance being that moment when you no longer have to overthink how to eat, what to eat. But of course, there's a long journey to get there. And many of us have been torn from, our cultural backgrounds. I mean, many of us are cultural mutts. We've moved around a lot. We travel much more than people used to. We're eating different foods. We're exposing ourselves to all kinds of things, which is wonderful. And that is part of nature as well. But it does leave one, especially I think in America, wondering what is best for me right now to eat. And we have so much to choose from that is also an overwhelming decision to make. And of course, there's various models we can look at, and traditional Chinese medicine is one model. It gives us a guideline. Ayurveda gives us another type of guideline. And there's other guidelines out there, but those are good, solid, historically solid models, and definitely relate to the topics at hand on this show. So.
Great. And so for those folks out there who aren't as familiar with, say, some Ayurveda or five element um, theory, how would you describe those traditions?
Well, for me, I would describe, I mean, Ayurveda is essentially the yogic traditions, and those come from Vedic texts that are ancient, and is designed by people living very close to the cycles of nature and seasonality, and living very close to the land. Traditional Chinese medicine as well. The same principles, but culturally different. So they're reworked and reconfigured. As you know, traditional Chinese medicine uses yin yang as one way to measure foods. And so those are just ancient traditions that we have from the East. And I think they're highly beneficial for us in the West. Again, especially being in the Americas, where, you know, we all come from different backgrounds, and yet we can reach back to these Eastern traditions to find a foundation through which we can navigate our own health, because that's really what they provide. In addition to, of course, a practice that is inclusive of breath, meditation, and postures, exercises. And that's all very significant to our digestion.
That's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. So I'm looking at our notes here, and I'm wondering if you could address, where we left off with Javi. What would it look like for us, I guess, to eat again through our feelings? What might that look like? I think is a good place to start.
So getting back to Javi's description of wandering through the forest, I mean, definitely your senses are enhanced, and you are noticing things. This harkens back to all of our ancestry as hunter-gatherers. That's part of our biological instinct, is to look at plants as potential food. And agriculture came later. But again, another big part of our ancestry, cultivating crops and saving seeds, and breeding different types of foods for ourselves. This is all definite practice that comes from all of our ancestry. And food is deeply cultural as well as geographic. So part of your survival mechanism is being able to walk through your area and communicate with those plants. That's a built-in survival mechanism. The other thing I would say, there's a lot of incidental things, and we didn't really talk about this, but it's definitely significant to Chinese martial arts, which is tea. The story of tea is that a leaf fell from the branch of a tea plant and fell into a pot of boiling water. And that was the invention of tea. So there's incident as well that comes into play with our food and times of past.
Divine intervention, if you will.
That's true. And but at the same time, we this is part of our DNA. It's part of our genetic makeup. And we've developed food obviously through centuries. Tribal groups have traditional recipes. This is a significant part of their heritage. Grandmothers, uncles, aunts, grandfathers, your parents have all given you recipes and ways to make food, and that's a part of you, and they fed you on that food, and you carry it through to your children or your friends, or whoever you may come in contact with. So all of that is a significant part of just, yeah, your original experience walking through the forest. You bring that in and you share it with others. So it's not just an individual experience, but very much a collective.
So I'm having all of these ideas. One of the things, that was coming to mind when I was preparing, for this and the conversation was when what I describe it, and what I ask is, okay, so where is the wonder and where is the curiosity for our food? And when I think about where we go for our food, where we think food typically comes from, I think about walking into the grocery store, right? And
Yeah.
and for me, that's saddening. I know when I look in the produce section, I know, pretty much what's what. When I go to the packaged food, the bulk food section, I know what's what. There's no curiosity. There's really no wonder. To the degree that I describe walking through the forest where something catches my eye or my scent. And of course, that's not to say that I know everything in the produce section, like discovering a new fruit, or like, a jicama or something like that, and learning how to use that, in a different way or something like that. Of course, all of that I open myself up to, those experiences. I just see those, as you said, the incidentals, those experiences, uh, diminished, if you will.
Mm. Yes and no. I mean, we have to give ourselves room to experience what is now, and we have stores. I mean, that was a development that, humans needed to make for themselves in order to keep food more available as we've been evolving, this entire time. So, and marketplaces are traditional as well. We've traded seeds, we've traded all kinds of foods, dried or otherwise. That's a huge part of human history. When the Spanish came to the Americas, they brought branches of from fruit trees to plant here. They brought their livestock with them. This is all very significant. So there's nothing, we can say there's something lost, but yet it's just a further extension of what was, and we can continually recreate by having our own home gardens, by having even a bucket garden. If you don't have a plot of land to work on, you can grow food right in your kitchen in an apartment or off a balcony. Um, it doesn't require a lot of space, and getting in touch with that, where you're not always just going to the store, but yet you can have that from seed to fruit experience. Absolutely.
That's interesting. I think having the seed to fruit experience, which definitely opened my experiential world up. Can we talk about the vibration? Can we talk about the connection to chi, energy, the life force, and and directly how one might feel should they dive deep into a quote unquote, let's say, a food nourishing intention, food nourishing practice?
Mhm. I think without consulting a professional, which most of us may not be able to afford, and we can do it on our own, is to research. And one of my favorite books is called Healing with Whole Foods. It's by Paul Pitchford, and it's a fabulous introduction to traditional Chinese medicine in relation to foods. And there's an entire chapter on vibrational cooking. And basically in the chapter, you're trying to um, work out balance with how you prepare food. Um, you are weighing the effects of food, whether they're energizing or calming, and that's something you mentioned earlier in the show. You're also looking at the vibration of a food, whether it's fresh or whether it's been frozen or, packaged, and all of those issues. And as you perfect the balance of your food, you're actually becoming more and more attuned to what you will need. And you can decide further what you need and what is good for others with food. So, yeah, the vibrational effects of food and cooking in your world are very significant. And it's definitely all about qi.
So, Sophia, I want to make sure that we really unfold this food as memory idea. And so, just for the listeners, I'll say, you know, when you and I were having this conversation, you were teaching me things. You're actually, and we still use this recipe, the bone broth recipe that Nona and I make. I got it from you, in which we take beef bones and we make a broth. We boil it over the course of 2 days, along with rosemary, which I remember you saying was it influences the adrenals, along with garlic and onion and carrots and celery. And but you were just like, you could play with it. You could do whatever recipe you want. And you showed me how to interestingly develop an overnight fermented oats with Granny Smith apples. And so I learned a lot from you, just I think that it was like 5 days or something like that, or so, that you were there. And but one of the things that you told me was, well, food is memory. Tell us how food is memory.
Oh, I mean, again, this is something that I clearly did not invent. This is something that's from Ayurveda. And I can read a quote, if that kind of works our way into thinking about this. And it's from a book called A Life in Balance, written by Maya Tiwari. And it's a book that is all about Ayurveda and food. And she writes, "Food is our most vital link to cognitive remembrance. Every microorganism knows instinctively how to protect, flourish, or recede to balance the dignity of the earth. Cognitive memory is carried in the impulse and throb of everything that has existed from the beginning of time and space. The food body is the most tangible form connecting us to universal consciousness." And definitely, I think in terms of Qigong and food as post-birth Qi, we can also relate that to that quote. And again, we mentioned that, earlier times people were closer to nature, and that all of our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. And when we, including to the fact that, we ourselves, when we were in the womb, the first thing we do is start feeding. We're feeding in the womb. And so when you grow your own food, or when you work on a community farm, or when you're just, there's city community farms, there's community farms in rural areas. I work in an organic farm with all kinds of people, work traders, some are interns, some are paid employees. You're engaging in an extremely primary practice that connects you to the life of our planet. And that in and of itself brings forth food as memory. And we are also the seed itself. Seed selection has taken place over centuries. Whether it's people saving seeds, animals consume seeds, then release seeds that then turn into plants. They disperse seeds. Grass seed will cling to your clothes in a heartbeat, and what you're doing is spreading that seed. So whether it's human or animal or the plants themselves, the wind, rain, spreading seeds over centuries, that seed selection with soil fertility, and then the whole involvement of harvest and production, distribution, preparation of foods. This is all something that humans have been doing in order to survive from day one, right? So this is part of us engaging into ancient practices, as well as reinvigorating our memory as being beings close to the earth and the life cycle. So that, I think, is essentially what the ancients were trying to say, and how we can stay connected to our planet is really through our food. And that's we can stay connected to the past that way, and we are going to stay connected to the future that way, as well as in this very moment. So
fantastic.
So, Sophia, then let's talk about the hows, the applications, and maybe your experience. I guess as we unfold the food as memory, we want to introduce food as practice, coming from, let's say, in these times, food as comfort and food as entertainment.
Well, it's true. We've been down this road of food as comfort and food as entertainment, and it doesn't always provide us with the proper nutrition. We may have calories from that, but it's not really nutritious. And everybody has their own pathway. Unfortunately, a lot of people end up with a healing crisis that then turns them onto food as nutrition, right? And for me personally, it was just evident as a child that no junk food was going to work out. I'd just break out in hives, actually have allergic reactions to it. And you see that more and more, actually, as our food has become chemicalized. More and more people are having these negative reactions to chemicalized food, whether it's GMOs, whether it's the preservatives, high fructose corn syrup, the list goes on. And they're constantly adding to the allergen list for children. So I think, whatever it takes for people to start seeing food not just as comfort, because food is comforting, no matter, an orange is comforting. We don't need a package to tell us that. And hopefully it's not a healing crisis that leads you there. But I do want to say too that as you said, as in terms of application, there's the what and then there's the how, right? So what can be discussed, and individuals are going to need different whats at different times. We can, you may need some yang food during a yin season, or maybe you're feeling extra low during a yang season and you may need extra yang food. It depends who you are. And there's a lot to dice out there. Again, Nona brought up 5-element theory earlier in the show and things like that, but really none of it will matter what you eat if it's not how you eat. And I believe it's a macrobiotic saying that says a happy person can eat rocks. Yeah, so it's really significant. And this is where Qigong practice is very relevant in terms of, how you're going to eat. Are you going to take time to chew your food? Are you going to take a moment to bring in, kindness and love into making your food? Gratitude, all of these things that are really important when eating. And Ayurveda, for example, brings a list with it that you can follow to kind of help guide yourself, just like you would postures to help guide your energy. The first thing might be to just control your emotions. That's something significant for Qigong, and it's significant for food production and food consumption. They say an angry cook will give you angry food. And if a cook feels rejected, oftentimes that cook's food will be rejected. This is vibrational issues, right? This is Qigong issues. So what you're attracting will then reflect itself in the food. And so it's really important that when we sit down to eat, that we're not eating angry or sad. And if you need to give yourself space, do so. Don't eat when you're sad or angry. Take a moment, breathe. And that includes, making food. All food should be washed, prepared, cooked with care and gentleness so that proper balance is infused. And people will feel that. Chewing slowly, we've all heard that as growing up, but that's significant. And as we take our time, we can feel the gratitude, and we can feel that generations of people and animals and plants and the earth itself have brought us this food. That's another connection there. And we can say only eat till 80% full. Oftentimes, we want comfort food, or we're using it as entertainment. We're watching a show, we're watching movies, and we're filling ourselves till we're stretched, and that doesn't give your digestive system a chance to really absorb what you're giving it. And that's in direct relationship to Qigong and Qigong breathing, which I think both of you could probably speak to more than me. But again, all of this leads to one of the most significant things, and balance can't be said enough. It's look at your plate. Do you have a balanced diet on your plate of food? Are you breathing? Are you having good thoughts while you're eating or while you're making that food? And that's definitely a huge part of, even if you can't access top tier nutrition or anything that's being advertised as superfoods, if you have a low budget, you can eat with the proper how and get many things that your body will need just by ingesting it properly.
So a couple of questions. One is, do you think that you can change the vibration of a food? And also, it seems like a lot of what you're talking about, it has to do with mindfulness and awareness and the meditative mindset.
Absolutely. Many people feel that you can change the vibration of food. And people feel that way about water as well. And that's a whole nother field of study. But there's a lot to be said for that. And so sometimes the what is almost not as important as the how. And I'm a person who's sensitive, and I have allergies to food. And I have to work through that. So I work on the how if my what isn't exactly in alignment with myself.
I see.
But absolutely, mindful awareness is definitely a key issue. And it comes back to that eating for entertainment. Mindful awareness in terms of food is where you're not compulsively eating. You're not just grabbing because you feel the need in that very moment. And it might be a heated moment full of emotion. And instead, you're taking that space and that breath to step back from that urge and make a better decision for yourself. If you need to make a better decision, you at least are giving yourself the space to do that.
I wonder if Nona has anything to add too from the how and the what, because she also, you know, is sensitive as well, and um, decisive on the what.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, the things that can change your energy potential is one of the things of the four, you know, one being food, air, um, and exercise. The last one is your mind. So I have you know, that relates to this situation. You're talking about mindfulness, intention, emotions. In Chinese practice, the emotions have to do with your emotional mind. There's the wisdom mind and the emotional mind that make up the whole mind landscape. And having, you know, love of science, though, you know, my mind can also possibly get in the way of imbibing vibration into a food that intellectually and also through my feeling already I'm not jiving with. So say it's, you know, bleached out white flour donuts or whatever it is, you know, or, you know, or potatoes with lots of glyphosate. Like, I could try to sit there and imbibe goodness into this genetically modified potato or corn or soybeans that I've seen growing in, you know, monocultures across America, destroying, you know, pollinated landscapes. But I have so much mental weight that goes with this, like, you know, unethically grown food that I don't know if I could personally imbibe nutrition back into this product that's been genetically modified, not for more or goodness, which
humans have the potential to use genetic modification to do that to our foods, but we've chosen to genetically modify organisms to better take up pesticides and herbicides, and that's the issue. I mean, genetic modification, we've been doing that on a, you know, non-DNA sequence scale in other ways. We've been genetically selecting, and we can select for flavor and beauty and nutrition, but we've been doing genetic modification for these shelf life and you know, and ability to uptake these chemicals. So I don't know. I think, you know, sometimes I don't know where I stand with that, the meditation and intention and relationship with your food, the power of the mind, and also the hindrance of the mind. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I mean, you know, you and I share similar food beliefs and thoughts, and I think, as well as responses. And for me, you know, the how can take me for a little while in the short term. In the long term, I'll start feeling the effects in my body. But I guess it's significant to note that, you know, for example, I could be eating fabulous food, but if I have a lot of stress, I will not respond well to that food. And so that informs me in that moment that despite the high quality of food, which is working well in my body, I mean, it's a synergistic experience, right? But if I'm fighting that with anxiety and stress in the moment, I may not get the nutritional uptake that I'm actually giving myself by eating that food. I might actually make it into a negative experience and cause a chi block in my body as a result of this emotional output that I'm you know, creating. But and so that means that in the reverse could be true, you know, by giving what may seem like inert and lifeless food better vibrations, it will have a better experience in my body. And I'm not suggesting people go out and just, you know, eat bad food and do that all the time, but I am saying there is an interplay there of how and what in our experience.
terms of the experience of food, first, how much is like sitting around a dining room table? How much of that is modern? How much of that is ancient? And then also, in terms of preparing yourself and your body for a meal, one of the things that you shared with me was having a sip of soup, having a sip of bone broth, to start to create the digestive juices, get them flowing. So that was really interesting that with me, and sometimes I try to apply that. So yeah.
Well, I mean, eating together is huge, and that is ancient, absolutely. But if you're alone, that's okay too. We live where we live, and we live how we live. And if you're in a community right now, and you're able to eat together, and you eat at the same time, um, that's a beautiful shared experience that everyone is having. If you're alone right now, and you're having your meal by yourself, you can think of the people you love and have them be there, in your mind, or however that plays itself out. I find myself eating alone a lot, but and I don't mind, because I know the food is connecting me to the collective. That's one of the big things about food, that no matter what, I know I'm connected to the past in a very potent way. And yeah, absolutely, liquids, broths, or when we were juicing, um, having fresh juice, a little bit of fresh juice gets those digestive enzymes going. I think one of the things that we can keep in mind right now with immunity is hydration. And so if you make yourself some broth, great. If you make yourself some fresh juice, which is really nice for spring, that's another great way. Um, and making sure you're drinking plenty of water, and having fresh foods, which have a lot of water in them. Denatured foods, frozen foods, they're a lot of those, or overcooked foods, fried foods, those have a lot less water and less hydrating. In fact, they've got high salt, sodium content, so they're dehydrating. So yeah, for really optimal health, you want to have a lot of hydration in your diet.
I love that you brought up water, because I feel like that goes in the food consumption category when we talk about those basic things that we need to affect our energy. Definitely water is one of those essential nutrients.
So I just have a question. What do you have something on?
No, go ahead. I was yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to the balanced plate. When you're sitting in front of your plate of your food, what does the balanced plate look like?
Generally speaking, the balanced plate would have whole grains and vegetables as a majority of the plate. You could have some meat, you can have some dessert, some sweet, and then there's all kinds of things that end up laying out outside of that. But it's really what most nutritionists are going to suggest is that you have lots of vegetables and lots of whole grains. And that's talked about. Definitely, Michio Kuchi talks about that in terms of macrobiotics a lot. That's a huge thrust in that line of thinking, but it's definitely in our modern nutrition and holistic and healing arts is consistently talked about having lots of vegetables.
So what is it about vegetables? If vegetables are supposed to be so good for us, why they taste funny? Why don't they taste good?
They taste
I don't know, maybe you're not
great.
making
I love
right.
vegetables. Yeah. Who says they don't taste good?
Oh, you just gotta cook them the way you like them, Javi.
I love vegetables. I'm just playing a little devil's advocate here because
Yeah.
I just hear so many people I don't know, they don't like vegetables. They don't want vegetables,
For me, it's hard to personally understand because I always loved vegetables growing up. But, you know, um, it's true that, again, when you were talking about going to the store and all the, frozen foods and overly prepared foods that are just laden with dressings or fried and things like that, we lose sight. Our taste buds are altered. We're in this trajectory where all this over processed food is what seems like it's good for us, and our body craves it. And yet, when we dial back from that and we engage in our mindful awareness and we're engaged in our practice, you're going to get so much out of fruit and vegetables and whole grains. They're truly delicious. You just have to get off of the food as entertainment, in particular. And comfort foods, you can ride a line there, but the entertainment food, if you pull yourself away from that, you can start really appreciating what the earth has to offer.
And I think that that's, a really interesting thing is that your taste buds and your flavors, that's all very sensory, and that's developed, right, through what you're used to eating. And so you could definitely potentially build a taste for vegetables and fruits. And it's all the more helpful to have that produce be as fresh as possible, with grown in healthy soil, with nutrients within them, like a diverse palette of nutrients, which gives the food its flavor. And so going back to fresh foods, I think, could be key there.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how many people like canned asparagus, but clearly the fresh, organically grown, even wild asparagus. We have wild asparagus here in northern New Mexico, and it's divine. But yeah, definitely fresh always.
Fantastic.
Sophia, can you talk about organic? What does organic mean? Are we just being fooled in the stores? And, is that something that's has merit?
Well, yeah, that's a big topic. Organic, to my understanding, is a designation by the USDA, and in terms of seed as well as method of growing. So a food is considered organic if it has organic seed, as well as treated organically, which can include a set of fertilizers and pesticides and things like that are deemed under the label organic as being that. It doesn't mean that there are no fertilizers and no pesticides or herbicides. There are a set of agreed upon chemicals that can be used. No, it cannot have the label organic if it's GMO. If it's genetically modified seed, no, it cannot have the label organic. And there's several stipulations that continue on with GMOs. But I guess the point is that can we believe the stores and labels? I think we can, to the point that we know that there are certain chemicals that are being still used in the organic food world. And, I had a discussion actually with Dr. Young on this once, but, it's, you really, unless you know the farmer and you know the farm, you do have to have some belief suspension, and you have to kind of go with it. but ultimately, you know, if it says organic, that it's not GMO, which I think is very important for most of us. And we know glyphosate is being used to dry so many of our whole grains like oats and wheat and barley. It's not just being used in the fields in terms of Roundup, but they're also using it to dry these grains, which it wasn't an intended use, but it has become one. There's a lot of research, and a lot of that's come out in law cases and things like that with the Bayer Monsanto Corporation. But so when it says organic, like if you're buying organic oats, I think you can feel very confident that it's hasn't been dried with glyphosate, which shows up in your urine. And you can take a laboratory test to check that. But I work on an organic farm. However, the farm itself, where I work at Cerro Vista Farm, doesn't have the designated organic label because he does things so organically in our, you know, in the idealistic sense that he doesn't have the stamp of approval from the organic USDA world. He just knows he does that. And we all see the fertilizers. There's no pesticides at all. You know, the flea beetles are here already because we've had a warm summer and they've eaten the arugula and the leaves of the turnips, but so be it. That's part of not using pesticides. But so getting to know your local farmers is really significant. Sourcing, you know, finding the source of your food, growing your own food. That way, you know for sure what's going in. And check the soils too. Make sure that when you go to the hardware store, that you're buying not Monsanto Corporation soils, because they do have other names that they have on the back of those labels that you might be gardening with in your own home and unaware of that.
Wow, that's interesting. All right, well, I guess we'll wrap it up here. And if there's any way that people can contact you if they have questions, leave that. And then if there's anything else that you'd like to share in terms of unpacking food as memory, please do that. And if Nona has anything else to add too, then please do that.
I was thinking, as far as the question of organic or not organic, buying directly from the farm and things like that, I was introduced to a website called the Lexicon, the LIXICON.org. It's for the Lexicon of Sustainability, and they are just trying to create words to describe the basically the food system, like language to describe the food system and what's happening in our food systems. And I just realized recently that some people have an aversion to the word sustainability and sustaining. I didn't realize that. For me, it's very positive, you know, to be able to endure and continue on and thrive. But for some people, it was very like egotistical and just to sustain and just like be permanent, you know, which is unnatural. Like sustaining is unnatural in some way. So I just came across people who have an aversion to the word sustainability, but I just want to make a note, therefore, and clarify this word sustainability for this website is to try to create a harmonious way of living, I guess, that allows for not just the human species to thrive, but be in balance with others. So anyways, I just want to throw that website out there. They have a lot of good little videos regarding what does like free range chickens mean, you know, and like those little questions of like, what do these labels on our foods mean? What does natural mean? You know, what does GMO free mean? What is organic? And they do talk about how knowing your farmer, knowing the person who's growing your food and visiting their land and seeing how they are interacting with the earth is a really, like, you can't beat that. There's no labels. You don't need a label because you've experienced it firsthand. So I just want to reiterate what you just said there. So yeah. So Sophia, how can our listeners connect with you here?
You can email me. I think that's probably the best way. And that is S as in Sophia or Sam, PH Sacks, SACKS @gmail.com.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for joining us here. Until next time, you can check us out again next month. We are here on the Mud every third Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Javier and I are here presenting you with Chi Talks, and you can reach us in the meantime at Talking Chi. That's talking, QI, @gmail.com.